Hello, folks. Good to see you. Good evening, good evening, good evening, and welcome to Wagar on Writer. Wagar on Writing. And I can't remember which episode we're up to now, but anyway, it's this week's stream. It is Monday, the 1st of October, so happy new month. Always good to see you, and oh, fantastic to see some folks in the stream already. My regulars, by the look of it, Magnificent Mako, hello sir, Commander Terraformer, and Alpha Epic 11, and Bograt, fantastic. Some good names I'm familiar with now, so lovely to see you all. Brilliant, thank you very much for coming along. First things first, technical woes. This is not good. Oh, and hello Steve Shaw as well. Good to see you. Fantastic. Thank you very much for coming along. I still have technical problems. I am trying to debug this actually. This is interesting. So on Streamlabs there is two ways of capturing the display, and it was working absolutely fine, as you saw a couple of weeks ago. Last week it was busted, and this week I've been trying to debug and figure out what's going wrong with it, and I've reinstalled my NVIDIA drivers, and I've rebooted this and mucked about with this config setting, and I've still had no luck. And I now have an error message in my Streamlabs OBS log, which even Google can't tell me what the problem is. So I'm scratching my head a little bit. I'm going to try in a moment. Let me just see if this will work. So over here on the kind of left of the screen should be my display, but it's not capturing. So if I capture a particular window, bear with me just a moment, because I'm going to point it at Notepad, and there we go. You can see this is my error. So if anybody out there knows what this means, is this one. There we go. Device duplicator create failed to duplicate output. Appears to be my problem, and I can't figure out why. It was working, it no longer is. Here's the action. You can see I've tried to do it again, and whatever is causing this is stopping me from grabbing my monitor backdrop, and it's busted. So oddly enough, I can capture the game fine. If I put a game in full screen, no worries at all, it works. Oh, Alpha Epic 11, I might know what the problem is. Well, if you can tell me, if it's quick, maybe we can fix it now, but otherwise I'm a bit stuffed. Go on to Chrome settings and then disable hardware acceleration. Well, I'll give that a try. Oh, there we go. So let's just try this live, because you never know. Go settings, Chrome. So I'm looking in Chrome. Is this under advanced, I'm imagining? I'm scrolling down. Use hardware acceleration available. That is currently switched off. So I think I've been there before, which is a shame. I was hoping that might be the problem. So can I capture Chrome actually? Maybe I can do that with a window. It's weird. This window capture is working fine, but I can't capture my display. So let's just try and capture Chrome. There you go. That's working as well. So this is the weird thing. I can capture individual apps, as you can see, but I can't figure out why I can't capture the actual screen. So I can go and open applications, but we have to kind of do them one at a time, which is really irritating. Try re-enabling it then. Well, the thing is, it's not just Chrome; it's everything. I can't capture my desktop. So this is a weird thing. So I don't think it's a Chrome thing on its own. I think there's something weird. Anyway, so if anybody's got any ideas, then please let me know. We will have a play. Because it was working fine. I didn't change anything, honest, and now it doesn't work. So anyway, so there we go. Answers on the postcard. I will check the chat in a bit. But there's the error. It's really weird. So I have done the NVIDIA, yep, NVIDIA drivers updated, and I have rebooted. So I did the kind of switch it off and switch it on again thing. And I'm reasonably technical, you know. I've used computers for years, so I've kind of done the obvious stuff. And then I found that in the debug file. I thought, what the hell's that? And even Google can't help me on that one. So if anybody who's got some ideas, that would be good. But let's not let that get in the way of. Did I try updating them again? Well, I downloaded them literally about an hour before this stream, so I hope that they haven't changed then. And I did a clean install of the drivers. All my games are working, everything's working, other than this. This is the only problem I've got. So it is a weird one. It is a weird one. But let's zap that anyway. So I'm going to go full screen anyway, because let's have a chat tonight about a general thing. And sorry that zaps the stream chat on screen, but as you talk back, then it'll all appear again, so you get to look at me close up. So the bad news is I've still got technical problems. The good news is I have some lime and basil gin. So I'm going to have some of that now because it's Monday. Why not? And I like gin. I don't know if any of the rest of you like gin, but this is jolly nice stuff. I was given this for my birthday actually, which was about a month ago. Cheers. Anyway, so that is. Oh, that's nice. Yes. So I'm a big fan of gin. Some of you may not like gin, but I do. And that will that's actually quite good. That's quite good. So so there we go. Twitch is twitchy. Yeah, is that a general observation, or is that just is that just my stream? Yeah, it's a bit fun. Anyway, as per usual, getting utterly distracted. But that's kind of tradition on this stream. So anyway, just looking in the Twitch log, Alan RP48. I'm new here, not quite sure how to join in. Just chatter away in the stream chat, Alan. Absolutely no problem. Hello to Chris, and hello to Bitstorm. So thank you very much, everybody. And Selezin. Hello, sir. Good to see you as well. Good grief, they let anyone on Twitch these days. Fantastic. Yes, they do. I'm afraid. So I'm still new at this. I mean, how long have I been doing this? About a couple of months. Yeah, it's all kind of still new to me, and I'm getting there. Um, but you still can't say Sellerson. Sorry, Sellerson. Is that right? Sellerson. Tell me if that's right. I'm pretty sure that's right. Sellerson. Sellerson. It's the gin. See, I'm blaming the gin already. Anyway, this is supposed to be about writing. Anyway, back to back. That's better. Excellent. Thank you. Sorry about that for that. Sizzling, sizzling, sizzling. Ah dear. Um, yeah. Now you've done something technical in my stream, Bitstorm. That's sort of yes. Um, I don't know what that means though. That's exactly my problem. None the wiser. But there we go. No, I didn't have any gym before starting the screen. Actually, this is just normal. This is normal, Mr. Hughes. This is how we roll. So anyway, so news this week. I did promise you last week that I might have a bit of an announcement this week, but I haven't got everything sorted yet. There's a few more bits and pieces that I need to sort out. So I'm hoping to have something of a big reveal on the stream next Monday, which will be, for me, well, for me anyway, quite a momentous thing. A few changes coming up, which I'll hopefully be privileged to let you guys know all about. I will be publishing a bit of a blog about it, but I will be, obviously because you guys have been following me directly on this stream, I will be doing that straight, kind of first post on the stream live and talk to you about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and what it might mean to you guys. So it's all good news, I hope. But a bit of a change for me, so it's going to be quite an interesting thing. But that's going to be next week, so that should be quite cool. And yeah, we'll have a good chat about that. But tonight I wanted to talk to you all about the kind of process, the process of turning books into, turning writing into books, and that's quite interesting. Up until now, what we've done is we've been talking about the kind of mechanics of writing. So we've been talking about characterization, turning good characters and stuff, and we've been talking about world building. We've been talking about background lore. We've been talking about bits of grammar. We've been talking about editing. We've been talking about all sorts of bits and pieces. And all of those are the mechanics, I suppose, of good writing. And if you've been following this stream for the last sort of couple of months, you'll know that we've kind of gone through each one of those. We've kind of dissected it a little bit. We've looked at a little bit of editing. We looked at one of my novels. We ripped it apart. and at some point we'll find some time to go and have a look at other people's works as well. And there's a whole bunch of good stuff we want to do on that. But let's say you've got to the end of this process, and you've written a story, and you've taken some advice on description, and you've taken some advice on characterization, and you've taken some advice on how long it's supposed to be and the genre you're supposed to be in, and all that sort of stuff, and you've ended up with a story. What do you do then? So if I take any of my stories, you go through a process of drafting. So basically, once you've finished your story, you've effectively written a novel. Now that's a big achievement. Okay, so you've got to the end. Now the vast majority of people in the world never do that. So if you get to the end of a story, be pretty proud of yourself actually, because that's a big deal. You've done a lot of work, and hopefully you've got a story that works end to end, and you've put all sorts of cool stuff into it, and hopefully you're pretty proud of it. What you must do at that point is you must stop, and you must close down the word processor, whatever it is that you're using, and you must go away. You must do something else. You must stop, probably for a period of at least 2 weeks, I would say. I try actually and do a month. It's not always an option, but really take yourself away from the story. Try and think about anything else. Go play some computer games, play Elite Dangerous, play whatever it happens to be. Go and do something else other than what you were just doing. You may be thinking, why? Seems like crazy advice. I'm trying to write a book. Well, what's the point of not doing it? The thing is, when you're writing, particularly if you've kind of got to the end of your story, you're really, really too close to it, and you can't see. Use a cliche. You can't see the wood for the trees. You're so close to the story that you're too involved in it. You can't get away from it. You can't critique it properly yourself. Oh, and quick hello. Oh, and quick hello from Canada. Ah, Olga. Hello. Good to see you. Thank you for popping in. This is distant cousins from across the seas. Actually, for those of you who don't know, I am actually um, from Canada. I was actually born in Vancouver, so I'm one of these immigrant types who've come over here and written your books for you, which I always quite enjoying. Telling people about, so when they go on about immigrants, I say, oh yeah, they're awful. Yeah, yeah, good to meet you. Coming over here, stealing our jobs, etc. So that's all quite funny. So that's good. And chat's going mad again. Coming over here, stealing our words. I know it's outrageous, isn't it? Yep. And to be fair, I have been native in Britain since 1972. I was only 2 years old when I came across. I don't really remember a great deal about Canada before I was 2. Although I did go back in 1980, I think it was, and I've been back since, which is nice as well. But I must go back and visit family once more. One of these days we'll do it. Just catching up on chat. Alpha Epic 11. Any thoughts on the idea of attempting to write a book short story? Yes, I've been giving that a little bit of thought, but that's kind of tied into some of the announcements for next week. So we will go on that. Does explain why you can't say Olite. Well, it's Olite. Is it Olite? Olite? I don't know. You don't sound Canadian. No, I don't. I sound a bit British, I think. Yes. But I was born in Canada. I was actually born in Vancouver. So there we go. So anyway, stop distracting me. Going back to the topic. So when you finish writing a story, you are too close to everything in the story, the scenes, the people, the characters, everything that's in there, to do any kind of critical evaluation on it. So what you must do is you must stop, you must put it in a drawer, figuratively, literally, depending on whether you read a manuscript or whether it's on the computer, and go and do something else for a bit. You must take your brain away from it. Okay? Olite. So there's the. I'm gonna have some more gin. That's really strong. Olite. Right. And Seslin. Anyway, there we go. I can't say it. So put your manuscript away, because what you are at the moment is you are at the end of the first draft. You've told the story. You've got it out of your system. You have done you've done the whole thing, which is great. You are at this point in the process of making a book. At least in my calculations, about 50% of the way through the job. So that's a way to just frame your expectations on how much work you've done and how much work is still left to do. In the process of writing a book, when you get to the end of the first draft and you've actually written everything, and you've got to a point whereby you have the story and you have your first draft, you're about halfway through the work that you've got to do to turn it into a book. So you might be thinking, what the hell is next? Well, you won't be surprised to find out that following the first draft is the second draft. It's very logical. This, just stay tuned, because it's quite complicated. Yeah, Centauri Mega Gin. This stuff, I had a collection of gins actually. This is lime and basil. I think it's the basil that's getting me actually, because it's it's totally nice, but it's definitely hitting the back of the throat. So maybe it wasn't the best choice of beverage for a stream, but there we go. So following the first draft is the second draft, and there are various authors who've been quoted online that basically say after the first draft is basically crap. not to be too kind of beat around the bush. It's rubbish. Now, I don't quite subscribe to that view because it depends how you write. Now, when I'm writing, I tend to go back and do little bits of editing as I'm going. I go, ooh, no, I know what I'm going to do in that scene, but it's not quite right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to fiddle with it. And sometimes that will upset my word count for the day, and I'll go back and tweak a scene until I'm happy with it. And quite often I go back and reread bits as I'm writing to kind of go, I'm not quite happy with that, so I'm going to tweak and I'm going to change. But that's me. You might be different. If you go through your draft and you just literally get to the end and then they go, ha, right, I've made it, and you haven't done any corrections along the way, then the chances are you're going to have to do quite a lot of work. And what you've got to do, like I said, you've got to put it away, do something else for a bit, then come back to it. And what you must do then is you must read your first draft from beginning to end. And what you'll do is, as you start, you'll go, oh, this is all right, yeah, this is really good. And if you've left enough time, you'll suddenly come across things and go, ah, that's awful. what was I thinking? And you'll just spot things and spot things. Now, what you must do is you must make notes as you're going through this reading. But don't try and fix them at that point. Just keep reading and make notes. Go, no, I've got to change that. Got to change that. Got to change that. Don't stop and fiddle about with it at that point because you'll lose momentum. Go through it all the way to the end, even if it's pulling teeth by this point, which it probably will be, and just keep marking it up. Fix this, fix that, redo this, check this, fix that, do this, blah, blah, blah. And then you'll get it to the end, and you'll have a load of work that you've marked up and a load of things to do. And don't do what's... oh, God. So, oh, God. Anyway. Dave. I'm going to call you Dave because I know you're Dave. Don't do what I did, write a first draft and then leave it 7 years. Oh, God, 7 years. That is a bad idea. You're completely and utterly forgotten. That's too long. When I say don't put it away and don't do something, 7 years is a bit longer than I thought. Commander Terraform, I just wrote a short chapter and set it aside for a week or so and went back and reread it and it scared me to death. Well, that's kind of right. So, yeah, that's sort of what a first draft should do. It should have the bare bones of what you're trying to get across, but it will not be very good. Okay, so brace yourself for that. That's perfectly normal. And Zen, you're Zen. Is that Zen as in sort of Zen, or is that Zen as in the computer on board the Liberator? You know, he says Chucky in a sci-fi reference. So Terraform, that's not a bad thing. So don't be alarmed that what you wrote kind of has this weird thing that when you write it, you think this is brilliant, and when you go back and read it a week later, it's like, well, who wrote this? This isn't what I wrote. It was much better. So that is normal. I write stuff, and then I go back in and I have a look at it, and I think, it's the right scene. I'm putting the right things in, but it's not working. It's horrible, and but mark it up. Kind of write down what your impressions are, and then move on. And don't, yeah, you're quite right, Alpha Epic 11. I know I'm being, it sounds like a bit funny, but don't be alarmed that your first draft is rubbish. It will be. That's just one of those things. It's like the best analogy I can have is if you're making a wooden thing on a lathe, or you're carving it out. You kind of cut the outline of the thing out, and it's kind of roughly the right shape, and you can see the potential. But it's got no fit and finish. It's got sharp edges. It's got sawdust. It's got scrapes and marks from the drills and everything. It's not finished. It's kind of the right shape, but it's not finished. It's not polished. It's not tidying up. Okay, so that's okay. You are crafting something here. You are making something, and you cannot expect the first draft to be all that good. Okay, so that's just brace for impact. That's going to be right. Okay, so we're going with Liberators then. Okay, I wrote a short novel about 10 years ago, and I don't like it very much. I'm thinking of recycling some of the ideas in Java stories. Yes, Alan, we talked about that last week. Actually, never throw anything away, even if you're confident it isn't actually any good, because you never know when you might reuse it. So for every book I've ever written, I've got a big file in my drive called notused.doc where I just dump stuff that I ended up. It's kind of like the director's cut, on the cutting room floor, but it's just words in a file. So just just keep it. Don't publish it, obviously, but just keep it. That's fine. So your second, what you should do is use that time to go through your first draft, read it from beginning to end, and um, have a look. Your harshest critic will definitely be yourself. Yes, that is true. Yeah, it's a good point actually. Selazan. Let's say I got it right. Yes, yes, Selazan. There we go. Or Zen. um, and you know, you can be very critical. I'm very much a perfectionist. I hold myself to quite high standards. So that's depends on you as a person. There is a danger, and a lot of authors fall into this, that they think their first draft is better than it is. And that's a different sort of problem, that you haven't kind of got the self-awareness to go, oh, well, obviously I'm perfect because I've just typed this wonderful novel, and I'm, all those other authors are, just hacks. I'm brilliant. So you've got to be, realistic. Your first draft is probably not all that great. Okay, so just bear that in mind. And oh, you've hit a writing milestone today. The Swords and Sorcery novel I have been planning since I was about 14. Now, I won't embarrass you by asking how many years ago that was. That's a lot. And getting the shape with woodwork is half the work. There is sanding, more sanding, finer sanding, that's more, etc. And that's exactly like a book. It's a good analogy, actually. He says, just having thought about it along the way. And if you guess you can't see the problems of your first draft, yes, something is probably wrong. Yeah, you haven't got a sense of what's the word? We need a word for this. Proportion, maybe. You need to have a self-critical eye to be able to look at it and go, no, I can do better than that, or that isn't working. And remember the thing I talked to you about dialogue in that. Read the dialogue out loud. And if it sounds corny when you read it out loud, it's corny. Okay, dialogue has to come out naturally when you speak it out loud. You can't do it. Don't do it in your head, because that won't work. Read it out loud in a mirror, ideally, and then if you start laughing and go, oh my god, then you know your dialogue isn't good. Okay. Objectivity. There's a good word as well. So that's good. You don't mind. I'm still the baby. Yes, I know you're younger than me. Cheeky monkey. Self-examination. So yeah, all those things. Now, when you get to the end of the first draft, having read it and marked it up, you'll have a whole load of work to do, and that work is your second draft. So you'll go through and you'll fix all the stuff that's kind of jangled you as you've read, and you'll fix the description, maybe cut bits out, maybe move bits around. You might have to do major surgery on your book at this point. You might go, I might even need an extra character in here, or I've got too many characters and I need to combine some of those into one character. You might have to go, oh my god, I've got a plot hole here whereby this has happened and that has happened and I need to fix it. That's what the second draft is all about. It can be major surgery. Whole new chapters need to be edited. Give you an example. Elite Reclamation, most of you will be familiar with my Elite book. That had major surgery between the first and the second draft. And the reason it had major surgery is that one of my proofreaders, and I didn't spot this, so this is again why you need other people to help you sometimes. I didn't spot this because I was too close to the story. And one, I'd made a major fundamental error with the story, in the sense that I never got the main protagonist, which obviously is Kahina stroke Salome, to actually meet the main antagonist, which was oh gosh, what was her name? I can't remember the names of my own characters now. Hang on. I've got it here. What's her name? Someone's going to beat me. Octavia Quinton. There we go. She was the baddie in the story, the antagonist. And in the first draft, they spoke over radio comms, but they didn't actually meet. And all my, one of my proofreaders basically said, it's kind of a bit anticlimactic at the end, because they never actually interact with each other. All the way along they've kind of been vying, and we're kind of expecting this big confrontation, and it never happens. And I was like, damn, that's a really good point. And so at the end of the first draft of Elite Reclamation, Salome and Octavia had never met, and never did meet actually in the first draft, which would have been rubbish actually. So somebody pointed that out to me, and just to flip that one around as well, um, it is very important to get yourself some people who will be honest with you that your book is crap. This is really, really important. Friends and family are not necessarily great at this because nobody wants to hurt your feelings. Um, what's going on here? I wonder how family meals go. I can remember the name of my family, Munchkins. Yeah. Although I do have nicknames for everybody actually, so that's the way how I do it. Everybody has his nicknames. I can't pronounce Sellers. Yes, Sellers. I think that's right. And everybody's got wacky internet names as well, which makes it really, really hard. So there we go. But come on, give me a break, guys. I'm getting old. And I haven't had enough gin, so there we are. For a regular, your book is trash. Thank you very much for the honesty there. That's great. Brilliant. So yeah, but you do, seriously, you do need people who are going to go, this bit doesn't work. That's rubbish. This doesn't feel realistic. This dialogue really is kind of awful. And Dave's Mr. Sellerson is obviously one of my greatest fans. It calls me a hack at every opportunity, which is fabulous. Yeah, I like that. That's good. So I just have to work harder, make myself better. He spurs me on to better things. He does, absolutely. But you do need that honesty, because you don't want people to say, "Oh, it's lovely. I really enjoyed it. It was great." That doesn't help you at all. You do need people to check stuff and critique it. And I'm lucky. I've built up over the years a bunch of people who will check certain different things. So I've got people who are complete grammar Nazis and will give me a hard time over my use of a semicolon with the past participle of the inverted, nominative clause of the, some bizarre tense. So I get told off for that sort of thing. I've got others who are science, but kind of nerds, who will pick apart my use of science and say, no, you can't do that, because I've tried to do various different bits and pieces of accurate hard science in some of my books, and other people will just give me a view on the dialogue, whether it flows, whether the characters feel right. And it's been particularly useful for me to have quite a mix of gender there actually. So I've got some quite a lot of female proofreaders as well as male proofreaders who will sometimes give me a hard time over my female characters and go, no, you can't say that, that's wrong. Oh, you give me a hard time over Torn again. You didn't like that book, did you? Mr. Hughes, I will re-edit it. Actually, we did pick up on. We did use Torn actually a few weeks ago as an example of how things have changed and how much better I got. So yes, one of these days I need to go back and edit that a lot more, and probably redo it a bit. So it was my first book, to be fair. I do need to go back and revisit it. So I will do that one day, and then maybe you'll like it after that. I think no, 6 chapters. There's nowhere near 6 chapters, you monkey. Maybe about 3 pages or something. Yeah, I reckon you're still remembering an early draft, not the final work. So we'll see. And your grammar and the punctuation notes. Yes, you are. So I've got a whole bunch of feedback there to sort out as well. Yes, that's good. So we'll do that. So any thoughts about the best way to revise a novel and review the plot? That's a good question, actually. So going through the trick is to read it. You've got to read it as if it's a novel. So when you've done your first draft, put it away for a little while, as I've said, then take it out again, having given yourself time off, and read it from beginning to end. Don't stop to make corrections along the way through. Read it as a novel in the way that your readers will probably read it, i.e., they'll pick it up, and hopefully if it's good, then they'll want to keep going all the way through to the end. And mark it up as you go, all the things that you need to correct. That is what gives you your reference. Things will just jump out of you. Bits of dialogue you'll go, ugh, and descriptions you go, oh god, I'm getting bored, too long. And so so make notes on the way through, but don't stop to fix them. Okay, don't get the word processor around and start changing around. You need to read it all the way through as a thing, okay, as a book, and to see how well it stands up. And that may be teeth-pullingly difficult, actually. But you need to experience it in order to get a feel for how the thing flows. That will give you a bunch of notes, go through and do a second draft. Now your second draft will probably take you, so let's do it in my experience. So Elite Reclamation, a year from starting to write to finished book. 6 months in, you've done the first draft. About 2 months later, I would expect you to have a second draft approaching completion. Now, in the second draft, you should have, hopefully, fixed the dodgy dialogue, fixed the overly zealous descriptions, fixed hopefully the plot holes, and depending on the amount of surgery you've had to do on the story, it may take you longer or shorter than that. Certainly around for Elite Reclamation, it took me about that long to sort it. I think I had to write an extra chapter in order to do that. From memory, so you can add all those bits and pieces in as well if you need to. Depends on how much work you've got to do and how much editing you've done along the way. Oh, and good evening, Daddy Hoggy. Thank you for coming along, sir. Excellent. That's good. So that second draft should fix most of the structural problems with your book, and hopefully have you in reasonable shape. Now I then usually go on to a third draft after that. So again, with a second draft, try and put it down, try go back and reading it again as a novel. Now the trick is, and I'll repeat it time and time again, you must read it as a novel. You must go from beginning to end, because if you stop and start or dip into your favourite bits, or read it, I'll read the last chapters and do those, you're not going to see it as a novel. You're going to miss some of the flow. And what you might see in the second draft is things like pacing, whereby it's a bit slow to start with, or it drags a bit in the middle, or it kind of doesn't have enough excitement in certain bits to keep the reader interested. And it's all that sort of pacing stuff you need to look at between the second and the third draft, to make sure you're keeping the reader kind of occupied as you go through. Good question, Alpha Epic. How many drafts is acceptable to go through? Well, that depends on your skill. If you were awesome, you'd be able to write it straight away. I've never met an author who can do that. I personally usually have 4, and that's sort of the process I'm describing you tonight. It could be more, it could be less, depending on how good you are. Daddy Hoggy, he's up to draft 5. Draft 6 will be it, or I throw it a bin. No, you mustn't throw that in the bin. There's a good story, fella. I've read that. I know which draft I read. Was it 2 or 3? Which must have been more than a year ago now. And it was good. So I enjoyed it. It needed a little bit of work, but it was good. It was a good story. So there we go. Olga says, my problem is working through a factual story I'd promised my father I'd finish for him, so I've got to the second draft now. I'm stuck. Well, Olga, there's no real alternative other than you've just got to get back to it. I'm afraid it's hard. You've got to get the motivation for it. You've just got to do it. Kind of drag yourself, kicking and screaming. Once you get a bit of momentum going, you'll find it'll start to roll. But it's motivation. It's getting things going. I read draft 3. Okay. It's good. It's good. So yes, Daddy Hoggy, bit of encouragement. Go get that sorted. So draft 2 to draft 3, then so look for pacing in particular. So pacing is really all about the ebb and the flow of the story. What you've got to have a look at, if you're in an action scene, for example, your writing should be slightly different to when you're in a kind of more reflective scene. So when you're in a reflective scene, you can afford to use longer words and longer paragraphs and longer sentences and longer bits of dialogue as the characters are kind of chilling a little bit and looking around at what's going on. If you're in an action scene where things are exploding and wheels are coming off and all sorts of stuff, sentences should be short, they should be punchy, dialogue should be completely and utterly to the point because there's a crisis on. Okay, so make sure that pacing is working. Then there's a more general type of pacing, which is all about does the novel kind of go through enough kind of variations in speed to keep the reader going. You don't want to bog down for too long. you may need to be able to get some stuff across, some exposition and scene setting, but you don't want to stay there too long before something happens. You need to kind of build the pressure up again. And we are talking fiction here, obviously, rather than non-fiction. So fiction is obviously just the storytelling stuff. Yeah, keep going, Olga. Keep going. um, so that's how draft 3 then becomes quite a polishing kind of act. You're still looking for typos. Typos and grammar errors will just try their best to hide. They are horrible beasts, and they can slip past endless proofreading. You can gaze at the screen for hours, and they can hide behind paragraphs, and they're very sneaky. So you will keep spotting them forever, pretty much. When you're editing, by the way, it's very tempting, particularly with computers, to do find and replace. Here's a golden rule that you must adhere to. Do not use find and replace. Okay? It's a golden rule of writing on a word processor. Do not use find and replace. Now, you might be thinking, well, why not? Yes, that was the serious voice. This is an important rule. Do not do this, okay? Find and replace in a manuscript is a little bit like trying to tidy up your woodworking project with a hatchet. So be very careful, because the problem with find and replace, unless you're extremely careful, and basically you just won't be for various reasons, then you can accidentally fix something, all the way through, but it will bust something else. So if you, for example, have a name, I had a wonderful example of this, whereby I changed the name of one of my characters, and I thought, I'll just do a global find and replace on my character, and change the name from that to that. Fine, zip, went through and did it. 235 references changed. And I remember thinking, that's quite a lot. I don't think I'd referenced that character that many times. Oh well, never mind. Forgot about it. Came back, and what I discovered is that inside the document, my character's name, the original name, was quite short, and it was a sort of phoneme, I suppose. There must be a word for a piece of text within a word that stands on its own. It replaced that word, the character name, inside other words, with the new character name, which was quite a bit longer, which of course totally destroyed those words all the way through this document. So I had to go back through and read it from beginning to end, trying to find every single instance of this. Global find and replace, do not do that on your manuscript. Do it by hand. Or I think the solution there is find and highlight. That's probably a good idea, because then you have to go through it manually and check each one. You must do that manually. Don't rely on automation to do it for you. It's extremely dangerous indeed. It's so be very careful on that sort of stuff, making changes to it. And that just takes me back to another one. Have a backup copy when you begin editing. So don't just edit a single file. When you get to the end of the first draft, save it as first draft, then do a save as and call it second draft, and work on that file. Leave the first draft alone. It's done its thing. It's a file. It's a point in time. Ideally, when you're editing, take a copy of the file you're editing at the beginning and do a save as while you're working on it, and then if necessary copy it back. Be careful. Make sure you have copies that you can go back to if you screw something up, because sometimes the undo works and sometimes it doesn't. And depending on the word processor choice, you may have other options as well. And that's a good point, actually. You can use find next to manual replace. That works quite well. Just be careful. Or learn to use regular expressions. Yeah, you can. That's quite a technical solution. I'm not. I can just about do star dot star, but that's regex and all that kind of cobblers. Yeah, you're a programmer, you see. You've got an advantage of doing those sort of things. So for us mere mortals, we may not want to get into the complexities of regular expressions. And Jace the Bass. Ah, sir. Hello. You're just round the corner from me, literally. So that's good. Welcome to the stream. Yeah, making changes can introduce inconsistencies. Yes, you've got to be very careful. This is why I say read it. Read it all the way through. Don't jump into editing a bit. Okay? Because if you jump in it, start editing chapter 12, you may fix all the problems of chapter 12 and introduce a whole bunch of other problems elsewhere because you've just screwed up the consistency that you actually had all the way through the novel. You need to work through the whole thing from beginning to end and then mark it up with the revisions that you've got to make, and then you must read it again and make sure it works, and then you must do the same thing and same thing again. Don't do point editing, because what you'll find is things will fall apart around you, and then that will lead to consistency fails and so on and so forth. So you've got to be actually quite disciplined on this. Otherwise, you can bust your novel, which is really annoying after you spent all that time writing it. I've had this problem with consistency issues, particularly when I've had to insert a scene, and then I realised that actually inserting that scene has busted something earlier in the book. You do need to bear that sort of stuff in mind as you're kind of going through. Yeah, Steve Shaw, you're absolutely right. Keep it simple and manually do it. It's just safer. Take your time, don't rush, step through it, from beginning to end is my advice. Unless you're kind of superhuman, you can kind of maintain the entire thing in your brain, which I can't. Because a book is quite a big thing. You're talking 120, well, certainly 100,000 words upwards. That's quite a lot of text to kind of deal with and remember and cope with and so on and so forth. And like I say, I've just I've forgotten the name of one of my main characters. To you can't remember everything. There's just too much detail. So you need to spend time. And so that sort of brings you to a third draft. Now your third draft is the one that you probably want to send out to your proofreader. So actually Jason, who's on the stream, Jason the Bass, is one of my proofreaders. So I'm just going to, there's a little secret there. So he does help me out, particularly with some of the sciencey stuff, which is great. Fellow astronomer, caused me some grief in order to get the accuracy. It's important to me. You want to trespass, because the other thing that you'll notice is that you will make mistakes. That's guaranteed. And a lot of the mistakes you will be completely oblivious to. You will not be able to see them. You will not. Your brain will, because you know how the story goes, and because you know how the story is supposed to go. When you read it and there's an error there, you will read over it. At least there's a tendency to read over it, and you will skip it. You will miss it. You'll fill in the blanks that other people will go, "Hey, what?" When they're reading, because they're coming to it fresh, and there's no real alternative to having other people read your stuff. So your third draft should be your kind of, I suppose in computer terms we'd call it a release candidate. It's ready to be looked at and to be given a bit of a poke. So it's almost like a beta version of your code, of your product. It's good enough for people to have a look at, but it's not finished. It's not production ready. So your third draft should be of that kind of quality. So ideally what you have at that point is a bunch of people who you've bribed or corrupted, or you've got some embarrassing photos of them, or whatever it happens to be, or you promised them a free copy of a book at the end of it, to say, can you read my book and critique it for me? And you want a variety of people in there. So you want people who can do grammar Nazi stuff. You want people who are going to focus on the characters. You want people who are going to focus on the specifics of your novel. In my case, it might be the science or the astronomy. You want people who are just looking for plot holes and kind of conundrums around the way that you've told your story. All of those things, ideally. So you've got 4 kind of people there already, and you may want multiple viewpoints. Now, if those people are good, and the ones I've got are fantastic, what I get back after a few weeks is a copy of my book in Word format from each of them, all marked up again. So you've got like a whole bunch of stuff now to go through, and I've got to fix that and fix that and fix that. So they should be sending you back, say this doesn't make sense, that doesn't work, this dialogue's dodgy, all those kind of comments, but you'll get a copy of your back. So you do need, it's kind of an army of, it is, it's kind of an army of minions. I wouldn't want to refer to them as minions, I might get in trouble. But all of that sort of stuff comes back to you in multiple formats, and then you kind of got to work through that and put that into a revised, in this case, in my case, a 4th draft. which is hopefully where the vast majority of problems are fixed. Now, what you'll notice when you get back from your proofreaders is none of them spot the same stuff. There will be places where they go, oh, everyone spotted that particular one because it sticks out like a sore thumb. But I'm always amazed how some typos are caught by some people, some typos are caught by other. Nobody ever catches all of them. Quite often it's like different people just look for different type of problems. And certain things jump out to them in different ways. So it's worth having lots and lots of people. And then of course what you've got to do is you've got to integrate all that back into draft number 4 or draft number 5, depending on how long it takes. And there's a certain amount of work at that point. Now at this point, another 4 months or so has gone past since you finished your first draft, and you'll probably be pulling your hair out and screaming and wishing you'd never ever started on this book thing at all at this point. And a good rule of thumb for editing and drafting and all that kind of good stuff is once you are heartily sick of the sight of your novel, you're probably about done. Because when you get to the end of the first draft, you think, yes, I've written the book, yay, it's good. When you get to the end of the 4th draft, you make, I never want to see this book ever again. And that's usually my kind of, yes, I've kind of done enough editing and it's time to go. Do something else. So it may vary for you, but about 4 months of editing after 6 months of writing feels about right. Okay, so that's just gives you a flavour of the amount of effort you've got to put in. And this, going back to the woodwork analogy, this is the sanding, this is the polishing, this is the filing off the rough edges, this is the waxing, this is the varnishing, whatever it is you're making and you want to be a finished product. This is the polish. This is the thing that turns it from, yes, that's got some potential, to actually I wouldn't mind having one of those, and putting it in. So so that is the process that gets you to a point where your book is ready to go on to the next stage, because we're not there yet. That is just the end of your bit. So what happens now? So you've got a 4th draft. And I'm going to stop and have some more gin. Otherwise I'm not going to finish. Oh, that stuff is good. Yes, we should have a gin session on the stream. That's nice. For anybody who's joining late, that is lime and basil gin. Where's the camera? It's down there. This is a strange laptop, this one. The camera is there. It's below the bezel of the laptop rather than at the top like most webcams, because the screen is so wide that there is actually room to put the webcam at the top. So there you go. Oh, just catching up the chat again. Baba, how did you overcome problems with pace when starting, i.e. your heroine is in one place, then she's another, and then something else happens? I mean, how do you break it up and fit in diversions or reflections? That makes sense. Yeah, it does. Trick is to have the right number of characters for the story, in my experience. So if you've got a heroine, you need something to happen to her. You need other things to set the scene and happen around her that can give you a little bit of pace, so you don't have to kind of just spend all your time with her or with him. So that is a thing. You can use the other characters to show what's going on in other places and so on and so forth, and just break up that kind of action as well. Dad used to say you could get 500 A4 papers on the 1.44 megabyte floppy. I don't know, 1.44. Well, actually, I mean, a Word doc for a full book is about half a meg, I think. I don't know quite how that looks like on modern formats, but that's what it is in Word. So you should be able to get 2 books on a floppy disk, at least one of those floppy disks. That's a 3.5-inch floppy disk, if I remember. My camera's abysmal. I should try something else. Yeah, that's probably partly the illumination. I'm still working on my illumination, but it's only the crappy built-in web camera. I'll get one in, a better one at some point. I have to save up for that. And how expensive gin is in Norway? I wouldn't dare guess actually. How expensive is gin in Norway? I'm lucky. People buy me gin. This is excellent. Oh, you were telling the lovely chat people that my writing folder contains 1 gigabyte of data. Is that literally just writing, or have you got kind of images and bits of video in there? Because 1 gigabyte of writing is That's insane. You can't have written a gigabyte, surely. That would be 1,000. That's 1,000 novels worth. 300 megabytes of actual text. That's still a lot, though. But then again, you do massive, massive things, don't you? So, I mean, I don't know how big your Elite Encounters was, because that's probably 3 times the length of a normal novel. So that's probably 3 megs on itself before you add the images. That must be insane. So anyway, so we got the end of the 4th draft. We've incorporated all our proofreaders' comments, and we have a good draft. You know, the story works. We've read it. We're pretty happy with it. Okay. Now it goes into a different level, and this is sort of where self-publishing differs a bit from kind of slightly more professional stuff. You would traditionally at this stage, and what I do at this stage, is I send it off to an editor, which in my case my publisher provides for me, which is fantastic, so I haven't got to worry about it. If you are self-publishing, you have the option not to bother. You may be happy with it as it is, or you might want to employ an editor to kind of help you out. Now, the difference between what you're capable of doing with your proofreaders and your own drafting is significant. Okay, there's a lot of work that you'll have done at that point, but a professional editor really takes it to the next level. They will, if they're any good, they will give you a very hard time over your final draft, and then suggest a whole bunch of other bits and pieces that you've got to fix in it. They're looking for very specific professional book related edits. So they'll go back through pacing, they'll go back through word choice, they'll go back through description, they'll go back through dialogue, they'll go back through everything again, and then send you a whole bunch of suggestions back. Now, you don't have to accept them, but you can, you're probably advised to at least certainly seriously consider what they come back with. Now, what I can do, I think here, if I pop up my copy of Word. Now, I entered a short story competition quite a while ago with a story. I'm just going to see if I can get this up over here, so you can kind of look what an editor's output looks like and the difference it makes. And it's a short story, so let's see if I can find it. Books. There we go. Right, now I'm going to see if I can switch. I'm just going to lose the chat again. I've got it on my screen, so I'll refer to it in a moment. Desktop focus. Let's add, because my window capture is not working. It's really annoying. Let me get rid of those and add in a window capture. Let's go with Word, of course. No, not that one. That one. So this is my story. Called Metal. Now, what I'm hoping I can see here, because I can't find the right file. Why can't I find the right one? Yeah, this is annoying. This always happens to me, doesn't it? This is a problem when you just do things Blue Peter style. I thought it was that one. Maybe it was another one. Let's try this one. Oh, no, there we go. Okay, I think this is... No, that's not showing up either. That's weird. I should have one here. What I'm looking for is a file which shows all the markups. Pretty sure it's supposed to be that one. It's not showing up. That's weird. Let's just try one more time. Keep chatting amongst yourselves. We'll be there in a minute. Books, metal. I saw that metal post editing. Maybe I've deleted that. That'd be really annoying if I have, because it was a good example. I wonder if actually I might be able to do a compare versions. Let's try that. Hang on a minute. So now let me just get my Word up, because well, that's not working now. Hang on a minute. Let's try window capture. Add a new source. Right, we want that one. Right. So hopefully you can see that now. So this is a story, and I've got the version here, which is the post-editing version. So it's been edited. Let's see if I can. Where's the compare? There we are. Compare two versions of a document. So if I go and find the original one, and I compare it with, oh, that's clever stuff, this, the post-editing one, label changes with, there we go. Okay, so with a bit of luck, right, okay, I'm going to have to close this down again, apologies for this, and do it again, because the problem is Windows changes the name of the the folder. But compare result 2 is the one we want. There we go. Okay, so what you should see here is the difference between my original submitted 4th draft of this story and what came back from the editor themselves. And what you can see here is, even though I've gone through quite a lot of stuff, so here's the original up here, and here is the final version, and here's what the editor did to my stuff. Let's just move that so you can see that, so it's not blocking all my bits and pieces. There we go. So apologies for the slight technical issues with this, but what you can see here is the editor has basically suggested you got too much description up here, Drew, zap it. Okay, so get rid of all this whole thing here. Yeah, just slowing the story down. And here we go. Long ago, you don't need that. You've already set that scene. You don't need a long ago. Just get on with the story. Still pulsating after all this time. The world in question. Just you don't need that. You've told us it's long ago. You've established that. Don't repeat the same point over and over again. Just get to the chase. On entering orbit, we quickly ascertained. Don't be clever. No need for long words there. Found. You're quite right, Bitstorm. It's waffle. And you don't see it because it all kind of feels like part of what you do. The survey ship had landed upon the planet. Well, where is it going to land? We've talked about the planet, so we don't need to say upon the planet, just cut. Okay, so they are going to be, and as you can see here, and this was a few years ago, this one, they're going to be pretty brutal because they're not your friend. You're paying them for a service. And you can see here lots and lots of stuff has been chopped, quite a chunky amount here. Because it doesn't add to the story. Okay, you're trying to focus very specifically on what the story is about, and your editor here will cut through and saying you don't need this to tell the story, you don't need that to tell the story, stick with the essence of the story. So here's a really good one, because probably if you like you're like me, you like a little bit of sci-fi and you want to chuck some bits in. Our ship, equipped as it was with 0-point energy engines, I'm trying to chuck in a bit of background science, could hold any given position indefinitely. Does it add anything to the story? No, it just slows it down. We just plunged through the atmosphere. Let's just get down to the action. Why are we doodling about in orbit? We don't need to doodle about in orbit. Again, for it's been many centuries since Earth and her colonies spotted anything but the rolling grey clouds of industrial progress. It's too long, too long. So chop, 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 chop. And this is what your editor is going to do to your novel. So brace for impact. They are going to look at every single word and demand that you justify why it's there. And that's what a good editor will do for you. And it's an uncomfortable experience, okay? It's not very nice because it feels like quite often, and you are entitled to disagree, so you don't just go yes, 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 yes. Although to be honest, 80% of the time they're right in my experience. 80% plus, I would say. Um, so because they've got to feel this is their job. This is what they're good at. Okay, they are trying to rip out all the fluff, all the chaff, all the stuff that you really don't need, and just cut to the essence of your story. And there may be some things in there you think, no, I must keep that because that's important. But you really need to ask yourself, do I need it, or am I just self-aggrandizing a little bit? An editor will puncture your ego. So yeah, that's a good thing. It's an uncomfortable thing, but it's a good thing. So yeah, the editing input can knock the confidence a lot. Yeah, it can if you approach it in the wrong way. They're not criticizing your novel. Think of it as a sort of quality filter that's stripping out the dross and then extracting, the essence of your goodness, if that makes sense. Um, so editors will always say to me, it's there's and again the cliche, you can't polish a turd. If the story is rubbish, an editor isn't going to save it. But if the story is good, an editor can make it brilliant. Okay, and I'm lucky that I've got a good editor who gives me a hard time, and does occasionally do a is this, are you sure? Is this what you really mean? Um, and we'll check all sorts of things. So you can see here the editor was pretty brutal, and this is normal. Expect to see a lot of red ink on your track changes or whatever it is, the mechanism that you're using, thing, even after all the drafting and the fixing and the tweaking and the changing and the reductions that you've already done. A good editor will cut through even more of it. You probably lose a fifth of your novel potentially. Okay, um, you know, because they will really, really give you a thorough going over in a literary sense. um, that's a great question, Commander. So, do editors ever line out stuff that you know you need for a later part of the story that they did not see at the time? Yes. So you've got to be careful because it is your story at the end of the day, and you need to look at each bit and go, are they cutting that out because there's a valid reason to cut it, or is that actually something that I need later on in the story? And in which case, what will usually happen? And I've just done a compare between these two files here, but what I normally get back from my editor is a suggested changes and then loads and loads of comments thinking, I see why you're doing this. I think you might need it later on in the story. A good editor will consider your story as a whole. And having read through it, they'll go back and having understood it, they will go back and make what are hopefully sensible edits to it. They're not going to just edit it as they go through. They're going to look at it as a whole cohesive thing, if they're a good editor, because they need to understand what they're dealing with. But it's still your decision whether or not you accept the edit. Okay, so there is a bit of argy-bargy going through the two, and my editor is great because she will suggest alternative phrasing for things that are problematic. She says, I can't see where you're going here, but this doesn't have enough energy, or that's a bit too turgid, or that's way too slow, or you've got too much here. How about this? And you read it and you think, yeah, I quite like that, but I want to change some of the words. And so you might send that back and get them to comment upon it and and flip it around, that sort of thing. So yes, there's quite a lot of toing and froing in that process. Baba Ganoush, my first draft was 75,000 words and I was told it needs to be about 120,000. That's interesting. So who told you that? Was that an editor or was that somebody? Because that's quite interesting. You don't normally get word counts to go up. That's quite interesting. It depends if you're aiming for a particular market. Sometimes certain markets require books of a certain length. So 100,000 words is quite typical. 120,000 is kind of fairly normal for a science fiction book. 75,000 words is more sort of the length for a kind of a young adult sort of book. I think you'll find things like Harry Potter were around 75,000 words, that sort of thing. So depends what you're writing. Maybe that was the answer to that one. So let us know in the chat. That'd be quite good. So again, go down this. Oddly enough, here's an interesting thing. Right at the end, my editor said, chop the ending off. She said, your story will be much better without your explanation of what happened. So I'd written this. here you can see their God never answered, utterly indifferent to their plight. We've destroyed many worlds with our industry, and countless others are smothered under pollution, grime, and filth from which they'll never recover. Yet we utterly destroyed this world by mere greed. That was my original ending. And my editor suggested that I just let the reader figure that one out, and just stop it at their God never answered, utterly indifferent to their plight, and let the reader wonder what was the impression of what was going on at the end. And actually they were right, and it made the story much sharper, because I was doing a little bit, and again this is a cardinal sin we've talked about before. This is me telling, not showing. So I've told you, the reader, what to think at the end of the story here. I've told you we've destroyed many worlds. It was our industry that did it. We've done it to countless other worlds. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, I'm telling you. And we utterly destroyed this world. I'm telling you what happened. Whereas actually it's better to cut that out and go, let the reader decide how that ended, and what they think about it. So you'll notice here, that's the original draft, and it has that long ending, and here's the other ending, the ending that finally ended up in the story. Doesn't have that piece in, because just leaves it with you, the reader. What do you think? Which is a much better way of ending it. Too much telling, not showing. It's exactly right. So that is a cliche, but one of the reasons that's a cliche is because it's a really good cliche. It does work out true. So going back to Baba's one there, I was having it reviewed by a well-known company. It was sci-fi. Okay, well, yeah, 120,000 words is probably about right for a sci-fi novel. Most sci-fi publishers will probably be expecting that sort of word length, so that probably is good advice, I would suggest, on that one, Baba. The missing words become ghosts. They inform the writer, and they become Mandarin tiny years into characters, but no longer there. Yeah, so that's exactly it. You're trying to give a feeling, give an impression. Let the reader explore what they think your story is about on their own, without telling them the answer. Again, so most of the chops in this last bit are bits of telling. So it was clear the remains were all aligned, with legs set straight and arms pointing towards the wreck, as if in adulation. Cut, because that's me telling you what I think as the author. So cut that, because what do you think? Are the hands raised in adulation, or are they raised in torture? Are they raised in who knows what? That's for you, the reader, to figure out. An endless arc, well, you can't have an endless arc of a certain number of things, so that's daft. And again here, either way, she was the last of her kind. I'm telling you. How do you know she was the last of her kind? Maybe she wasn't the last of her kind. Maybe that's for you, the reader, to decide whether or not she was the last of her kind. Those are the sort of edits that an editor is going to give you. And I hope those worthless stones. Who's to say they're worthless? That's me. That's my opinion as the author. Cut that out. Leave you, the reader, with, are the stones worthless or are they priceless? Depends on your interpretation of the story, etc., etc., etc. So an editor is going to retain the essence of your story, but sharpen it to a pinpoint, if you get a good editor. Okay, so you can probably see the difference this is making. The story is intact. They haven't destroyed your story. They haven't ruined your story. They haven't ripped your story out and rewritten it and turned it into something that isn't. They have sharpened that blunt edge of what you were trying to do into a point, which makes the story much, much, much better. Okay, and that show not tell is something that's quite hard, because when you're writing this, you'll just kind of stream of conscious it onto the page. An editor is doing a different job. So all those things are, are choices. Now that's a good one, actually, because look, on this one, Worthless Stones, I decided I wanted to keep that one in, against a recommendation of the editor. So those are things. Those are things. What's your favourite way of introducing backstory and lore into your writing? That is a hard one, because people don't like info dumps and exposition dumps. The only way to do it is sparingly, in lots and lots of different ways. So you can have your characters refer to some event. So one of the favourite examples I used in Elite Reclamation, actually, about the reason that the Cobra was an old ship was having one of my characters get indignant about it. You probably remember the scene with Luco, where Kahina basically goes, "So what's special about that ship then? Because it just looks like a piece of junk as far as to me." And then Luca gets really upset and says, "Well, it's a campaign edition from 3125. Have you? It's the most famous ship in space. Have you not heard of it?" And so you can get that across to the reader through a bit of interaction between characters. You might have a character refer to some event in the past. You might have a character refer to something. That's a way of doing. You mustn't overdo that, because otherwise your characters sound artificial in the sense that, "Ah, yes, I'm here to tell you about the backstory," which is exposition. I've just recently started watching a series on YouTube which is um, critiques movies, gives them sins. What's it called? Everything wrong with. Da, 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 da. They're great fun, because basically whenever a character pops up with a bit of backstory, the guy just goes, "Exposition sin." So it's tough to get that stuff over. You need to do a little bit of scene setting, but not too much. You need to do a little bit of dialogue with characters referring to things, but not too much. You can directly drop it in, but you really must be very, very careful with that, because otherwise it just leaves a paragraph of text which your reader just goes straight past, because, oh, there's nothing happening and I've got to get back to the story. So you've got to be subtle. You've really got to be subtle chucking those things in so that the reader kind of picks it up. It's a bit like giving a dog, any of you got dogs or cats, it's a bit like giving your dog a worming tablet. You've kind of got to shuffle it in alongside the real food, in order because they don't notice it. So they pick up the lore in the background and the other bits and pieces without kind of getting distracted from the story. So there we go. I'm wondering if something I started writing will eventually paint me into a corner. I started writing a story where the prime character is kind of also the narrator from a first person, and the rest of the characters are shown from his point of view. I wonder if it will pin me into a show don't tell situation. That's quite a good question, actually. So it depends. Are you writing that in third person and then switching to a narrator's POC? I'd have to actually see the text, I think, to give you a bit more comment. So you do have to be careful with that, because the narrator in a story is normally kind of omniscient, can see everything and knows everything, whereas obviously a character doesn't. So if you're doing it from a character's POV, they should have their character's perception of the event. Whereas if you're switching the narrator view, then there can be omniscient. But you're saying here the narrator's from a first person. As long as you stick there, you should be okay. If you stick in first person and don't make your narrator omniscient, i.e. they shouldn't, from the narration perspective, they shouldn't be privy to everything about the story. They should only be able to perceive what they can perceive as from what they're seeing and what they know. So that's probably the trick, I think, for that one, terra firma. While listening and writing lectures, I bought myself a large 10-year-old telescope. We are the Drinklings. We are the Drinklings, yes. For those of you who don't know, there was a famous literary club that Tolkien and C.S. Lewis were members of, called the Inklings. I think was it Cambridge or Oxford? I forget which one they were in. Anyway, very, very clever literary, and they used to read each other, their works and critique them and argue about all things literary, and very highbrow and very, 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 very smart, I'm sure. Dave Hughes and I and John Hoggard, Daddy Hoggy, and Sellers on the stream, we get together occasionally, and we call ourselves the Drinklings because we haven't quite got to the literary criticism and sophisticated conversation stage. We just like sharing a drink. So we'll probably get to the sophisticated literary stage at some point, but we obviously haven't done enough drinking yet. Terra firma. Okay, can I send you something? Yeah, of course you can send me something. Yeah, send it through. Here's of telling the reader his thoughts and opinions. I think that's fine. I think as long as he doesn't have telekinesis about the other people he's watching, then you'll probably be alright on that terra firma. Girl on the Train is famously first-person narration, and she's untrustworthy with that. Yeah, so the nice thing about first person is you can trick the reader, because the readers may be used to the narrator being utterly 100% honest, whereas, of course, if you're a first-person narrator, you could be telling a whole bunch of porky pies, and the reader has to figure that out for themselves. Um, C.S. Lewis once said to Tolkien, "Not more bloody elves." Yeah. Babagunage, how do you structure your chapters and scenes? Is it by some rough word limit, or are you flexible on that front? I kind of aim for about 20 sides of A4 per chapter, but my chapters are long. Um, I'm apparently I'm apparently quite old school with my chapters, um, and yeah, long chapters are old school way of writing. So I generally have in my books between 15 and 20 chapters in total. A lot of other people will do quite short chapters, sometimes just a few paragraphs per chapter. So there isn't a hard and fast limit in terms of structure overall. I tend to stick to that, to feel that my chapters have about the right length. So I tend to like chapters where quite a lot of stuff happens in a chunk, and that's a chapter. I suppose I tend to think of my books rather episodically, so that chapters are roughly the same length, cover a significant piece of action, and then we move on to whatever the next scene is. But that's what I do. That's not a hard and fast rule. So I aim for that. I don't know what the word count would be for that. Probably about 3,000 or 4,000 words, maybe, something like that. So hang on, 120. Yeah, it'll be about 4, 5, 6,000 words. Thinking about it. So yeah, I think that's what I'm doing for the character. Only knows what he knows and can't tell the reader what's actually happening. No, that's correct. I think you're probably safe there, Terraformer. Just make sure that your character doesn't know stuff that they shouldn't be able to know. They can listen to what other characters are saying, for example, but they mustn't be able to see into their minds. And Daddy Hoggy, I'm the exact opposite of Drew. Yes, I know. That's good. I didn't want to signal you out there, but that's a good point. Chapters to be read between tube stops, so about 3 minutes of reading. So yeah, Daddy Hoggy does the short chapter, which I'm told is the modern funky way of doing things. So there we are. And so Drew, since you said you write your books like it could be a movie, would the length of a chapter be the same as an episode in the series? Possibly. I don't think it would quite translate chapter to episode. But I've never tried turning my books into a TV series. I don't really know. I do write chronologically. That's just me. I don't like flashbacks, and I don't like alternative viewpoints of the same event in subsequent chapters and weird little tricks like that. My books tend to be straightforward in that perspective, that they chronologically run from beginning to end in a pretty much, the same time period is transpiring. So if a chapter happens over a period of time, then the next chapter will probably happen over a similar length period of time, if that makes sense. So yeah, Dandy Hoggy, American Gods is not translated into one chapter. No, I don't think that would work, because I'm not sure if it would make great television. For example, in my Shadewood series, each character has a chapter of their own, and then so chapter 1 is one character, chapter 2 is another character, chapter 3 is another character. I think in TV you'd probably blend aspects of those together to make sure you got all your characters up front fairly quickly. When somebody does a TV adaptation of Shadewood, we'll find out. So yeah, we'll look at that one when that happens. That'd be really cool. So going back to things. So anyway, we've done the editing. So that kind of brings us to the final draft, as far as you're concerned. Now, the final draft is the one that's gone through professional editing, and you've made all the changes or argued with your editor. That's your final draft. Maybe your fifth draft, but it's the final one. The final one then goes back to your publisher, or if you're self-publishing, goes to you to do clever magic stuff on. And basically at this point you would have a kind of what's called a copy edit, and a copy edit really is all about going through it again just to make sure that the grammar is okay. But also most publishers will have what they call a house style, and a house style is things like some publishers will use double quotes, some publishers will use single quotes, some publishers will have 2 spaces after a full stop, some publishers will only have 1, some publishers will put a space in front of an ellipse, the 3 dots that I quite like using. Some publishers won't. Some publishers like paragraphs of a certain length, some publishers are not too worried. All those things are stylistic, and a copy editor will be looking at those kind of things. Once that's done, you're almost ready for an ebook version. But you've got little things like change of scene locator. So for chapters, for example, there's a tradition in publishing, just to make things look good, that a chapter always starts on a facing page, not a back page. So when you're looking through a book, you'll always notice that a chapter always starts on a facing page, either one on the right as you're looking at it. Yeah, an ellipsis. Sorry, an ellipsis is a squash circle. Quite right. That's the gin, isn't it? Yeah. So yeah, so chapter always starts on the facing page. But if your book isn't exactly the right length, or your chapter, the previous chapter, isn't quite the right length, then you may end up with a blank page on the flip side, and that doesn't look right. So a copy editor again will adjust the text very slightly in order to make sure there's some text on the facing page, and that's just a case of tweaking, page boundaries and all that sort of stuff to make sure it fits both as an ebook if you're doing an ebook publishing, or also if you're doing a paperback. You need to tweak things around a little bit to make sure that it all fits and that a chapter starts in the right place, and then that will ultimately decide where your chapters fall. And then you'll get, contents page needs to be adjusted to make sure it matches the chapter headings and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of the typesetting, copy editing bit. That's quite involved. I don't do any of that, fortunately. I've got some people who do that for me because that's horrible. But if you're self-publishing, you will have to do that bit yourself. And there's other little things like, for example, if I show you the, let's just zap that one. If I show you the Lords of Midnight, which is the most recent one I've done. Let me find it. Pre-typeset final draft. No, it's not that one. I need the final version. Where is that? Final? There we go. That's the PDF version. So this kind of shows you the end result. Right, I'm going to have to reset this up again for you. Sorry about this. Let me kill that window capture. Add that one. Add source. And hopefully it'll work with the PDF reader. There we go. Yep, there we go. Brilliant. Okay, so let me shrink this down a bit. Again, so we can kind of see it on the stream. There we go. Hopefully you can see that. So anyway, so this bit is tricky, and it's typesetting is horrible. And I actually only had to really do it with text. Citizen here, Dave Hughes, has had to do it with graphics as well, which that's horrible. That's horrible. So here you can see the chapters. Now, if you look at this particular one, so you can see, there we go, chapter 6. There's settings here to do with the gap at the top and the fonts, and obviously the feel for it, and the centering and the justification. All that sort of stuff is typesetting to make the book just visually look nice, as well as the text obviously having all been fixed. So all that stuff is in there as well. And also I've got scene boundaries as well. So you may find when you're writing inside a chapter there's a scene boundary, i.e. something stops and something else starts, and you kind of want the readers to realise there's a little bit of a pause there. And so, for example, what we did in Lords of Midnight is we had we put a glyph in, an ice crown. So that's what that is. That just kind of gives the reader a little comfort indicator that there is a pause and there's a slight scene variation. So it's bits and pieces like that which just make the final version of the book quite chilled and just looks nice, and so it sits on the page really, really pleasantly. So that's again the final thing, and then and only then are you at a point where you've actually got them call them pee breaks. Excellent. Yeah, places you can stop. So you all those little bits and pieces come together to make the final version of the book actually something that's published. And then you also have to do you can't see it here because this is the PDF version, but for each page, facing pages and inside pages will have different margins, because when you print them there has to be obviously a hinge or the book binding in the middle, so the spacing has to be different depending on this a left page or a right page. And all those little intricacies are all about the typesetting and stuff, and that's you know, yeah, a real faff. Trust me, it is a real faff. Um, and it's horrible stuff to have to do the kind of manipulation about sort of stuff. Is that and that's terrible. So most books have a blank space as a seam break, and then you use a glyph when that break comes at the same place as a page. Yeah, it depends. I don't think there's any fast rules on that one. Kind of where they feel necessary, really. I was just about to comment how little you use the to like 10 of them in less than a minute. I know. It's when I'm trying to concentrate and stuff. But there we go. It's all part of my style. That's good fun. So that's sort of the process. And after this, then you submit it to publishers and various other things, and you get proof copies back, and you have to check those as well. So that's a whole other piece as well. It's yes, and like I say, like Citizen says, there aren't any rules. It's all about your style, but hopefully you keep it consistent within your books. That's quite good. I think I missed a question actually here. Have you ever had to abandon a project, and when did you realise it had to die? Have I ever abandoned a project? I suppose I haven't specifically abandoned one. I've had quite a lot of false starts on some projects, stuff that didn't get very far, if that makes sense. And I've kind of gone, that's not going anywhere. So if that's an abandoning a project, then yes, I suppose I have. But I haven't abandoned something that I've spent a vast amount of time on, if that makes sense. Because I always plot things quite carefully in advance, I don't generally have a problem with that. So if I'm committed to doing things, it's more the sort of speculative one. I should have abandoned Don. You're giving me a hard time on that one. Um, so so no, I don't think I've abandoned a major project. I've abandoned ideas for sure, but not something I've spent an awful lot of time on. No. So yeah, that gives you a kind of flavour of that one. So as usual, it's 9:30 again. So my advertised hour is where we're going to have to change this, aren't we? So anyway, I hope that was kind of useful to kind of give you a flavour of the work that goes on. So I mean, certainly in my experience thus far, a year to make a book is about half of it is writing the story, the first draft, and everything else that we've talked about this evening is the other half, and the less fun half, certainly from my perspective, but absolutely necessary to get the quality of the story out. So having the idea and getting to the first draft is a big deal. You've written the story, but that's the halfway mark. Everything after that you've got to go through as well to turn your novel into something that's actually worth pushing out there. And no matter how good you are, your first draft isn't good enough. Just don't be under any observation that it is, because it ain't. Trust me. Just you do need to persevere and go through those stages. Go through those stages. Good to see you, Olga. Thank you very much for popping along, and thank you, Baba. No, that's been good. Where was the question? I just missed one. Do I enjoy doing these streams? Yes, I do these. I think they're good fun. Yeah, I'm enjoying this stuff. It's good fun. Terraform, we used to do desktop publishing. Actually, not too painful because you're used to it. Yes, if you know what you're doing. There's a lot of work. And Jason Bates, I found a new respect for the credit space. Yeah, a lot of people involved. So I mean, obviously the author is, kind of, I suppose, the key person, because without them there would be no story. But the amount of work that everybody else puts in to get the finished product out is significant. We haven't even talked about cover art and binding and distribution and the actual publishing bit yet. That maybe we can do that next week or something. There's lots of other stuff to go. It's quite a big thing. It's quite a big thing. There we go. Anyway, I am going to sign off now because I'll be in trouble if I go on too long. But hopefully a little bit of news for you all next week. So do tune in. I will pop into that. I would love to look at that technical problem, Magnificent Racker, but I haven't got time to do it now. So if you've got any suggestions for me, things to try, please let me know. Tweet me or Facebook me or just leave a message on Twitch, whatever it happens to be. And I will definitely look into it, because that is quite annoying. And I don't think it's outrageously difficult to solve. I just don't know how to solve it. But there we go. That's good. So anybody else, thank you very much for joining me this evening. It's been fantastic fun. Thank you for everybody who's been here for a while, and all the new folks as well. Been really good to see you all. So all the best, and I will see you next Monday. So and stay tuned on Twitter and Facebook for confirmation that I'll be able to make my announcement. So fingers crossed. We'll be there for that. That'd be great. All the best, guys, and see you soon. Right on, etc. With a W. Right on, indeed. There we go. Perfect. Somebody dumped it in the chat. Fantastic. Take care, folks. Lovely to see you all. See you next week.